So the thing about trying to learn how to get better at chess is that even though there's so much content out on the internet, on YouTube and on Twitch, or even in books and other places, is that a lot of that chess content, which comes from masters and people who are really good at the game, starts off jumping into obscure topics that are just impossible to follow, or start with such basic and obvious things that it isn't really helpful. Like, I think the number one search result on YouTube for how to get better at chess is a chess.com video where Magnus Carlsen is basically saying in 3 minutes, play the game more and have fun. And that's great. But I think if you're taking the time to look up a video on YouTube of how to get better at chess, you're looking for a little bit more than that. I think what you're looking for is more of a guide or sort of like a roadmap that will take you from just getting into the game or just starting to focus on learning to at least getting to a point where you're able to use the time that you spend playing the game efficiently in terms of having that time contribute towards improving your skill at the game or your rating. So I actually think I have a lot to add here. I'm not a master by any means. I'm about 1385 rated in Rapid on chess.com. And if you're just getting into chess now, then I was in your shoes just like a year and a half ago. But in that year and a half, I've been able to go from about 700 rated all the way up to where I am now. So gone up about 500 or 600 points. And I'm still working at it. And I actually just started streaming as well. So if you want to hang out with me or other folks who are trying to improve at chess as well, I'll leave a link to my Twitch down in the description. Okay, so where do we start? How do you get good at chess? I'm going to go through sort of the 4 main things that I think make up what you should be doing overall. And I'm going to try to do it in order of importance. And those are going to be getting instructions from some kind of content, whether that be YouTube or a book or some other source. Then actually playing, which is surprisingly not the most important thing you can do to get better. Then analyzing your games, and then doing tactics or puzzles, training like that. Now, the first and most important thing that you can do to improve is to get content. And what I mean by that is that there's so much content out on YouTube that tries to do this, tries to be sort of like a lesson, that you should take advantage of that. If you're just playing without looking at any kind of content, you're sort of putting yourself in the shoes of trying to get good at chess like the very first person who ever played. Chess is a game that has been played for hundreds of years, and there's an incredible wealth of information out there about how to get better. By not engaging with any of that, it's sort of like trying to do your taxes without letting anyone even tell you how to do 1 + 1. So in terms of what kind of content you should use, like I said, there's tons of it out there. There's YouTube videos, there's streams, there's books. And the biggest piece of advice that I would give is that you want to use content that is curated to be like a lesson. So streams are probably not the best place to learn how to play chess. YouTube videos and books are a little bit better because they've been edited. So someone who's trying to teach you how to play the game has thought about exactly what they want that final product, that lesson to look like, and has organize the content in a way that they think will help you learn the best. The second thing that you want to be thinking about when you're trying to find the right content to help you learn is that you want to find something or someone who is within their organization really doing a good job of explaining what they're doing. Because when you think about it, when you're watching chess content, what you're really doing is trying to become the person that you're watching. You're trying to get in their head and sort of take all that chess knowledge for yourself. And if you just watch and watch and watch some grandmaster playing, eventually you might start to think like them, but it will take a lot longer than it would if they were just focusing on one part of their game, which I just mentioned earlier, but also really explaining their thought process for that one thing really well. And for my money, I want to give a quick shout out to John Bartholomew. I think of the things I've just described, he does the best job of providing that. He especially has a series that's designed just for beginners where he covers those individual topics. And in my opinion, he does an incredible job of explaining his exact thought process along the way. One last thing I want to call out about the chess content, and another reason why I think John's content is so good, is that if you're watching chess content and you see someone who's like a grandmaster, like 26, 2700 or even higher on chess.com, and you see them play someone like Hikaru that's like 3,000 plus, and they lose, and you don't understand why they lost, then they're probably not a very good content creator. And the thing about John is that even though he's much lower rated, I think especially in these videos, he's only like in the low 2000s. When he plays a game, when he wins or when he loses, when I've seen him stream and lose, you understand exactly why he lost, because he does such a good job of explaining his thought process. So it's really important to choose a content creator or get instruction from someone who is good at explaining and organizing more than it is someone who just has a higher rating. Okay, so now that you've found some content that's helping you learn, the next most important thing to get better is going to be playing, which is pretty obvious. But there's a few extra things here that are going to help you maximize that time that you're spending playing to get the most out of it. So the first thing is time control. Now, most content creators and teachers will tell you that the longer the time control, the more effective it is at learning. And in general, I agree with that completely. But I think you can get a little bit more specific. So in terms of bullet, which is 1 minute or less for each side, that's going to be pretty much next to useless for learning. And the reason is that because you have so little time, you're not going to be able to think. And even more than that, in order to win in bullet, especially at lower ratings, you sort of play differently because you play to win on time. You play moves that just force your opponent to think longer. And those kind of moves don't actually make you better at chess, because when you play normal chess with a timing format that doesn't cause folks to be in time trouble all the time, all those strategies that you internalize aren't going to help you at all. The second most important thing you want to do while you're playing is actually go back and think about the content that you've been using to learn. So if you followed my advice about what I said previously, you've picked good content that's organized very cleanly, that fits into simple, easy to understand themes. So now when you're playing the game, what you're going to realize is that it's impossible to think back to an entire lesson. It's impossible to memorize everything that you hear and just regurgitate it in a meaningful way during a game. So the point of having it be organized so well is that if you're playing a game, and again using all your focus to play that game, if you just think back to the topic, whether that be undefended pieces or pawn breaks, something like that, that's going to be able to act as a lens for you to continue focusing on the game and use most of your brain power for that. But just because you've thought of that theme, it's going to start to direct some of your thoughts about the game in the direction of the lesson that you learn, and that's how you start to incorporate it for yourself personally. The other thing about this is that it's going to really help you with the next step, which is going to be analyzing your games. Analyzing your games is where you finish the game, you're on chess.com, Lichess, Chess24, any of those, and you have the option to go back and review it, usually with the help of an engine. Now, a lot of times this can be tempting to skip because you just want to get into the next game, you're here to play, especially if you lost maybe. You don't want to dwell on the past, but trust me, this is really important and it will help you a lot. So when you're doing analysis, there are a few specific things that you're going to want to do and keep in mind. They could honestly be an entire video topic in and of themselves. But to keep it simple, the 3 things you should do when you're analyzing are, number 1, turn off the engine. Most analysis programs have an engine that you can turn on that's going to show you the best moves from a computer perspective. The reason why you want to turn that off is because it can make you lazy in terms of thinking for yourself and actually critically considering what went right or what went wrong in the game. But also, it's going to show you the best moves from a computer perspective. And that can a lot of times lead you astray because the computer move might not be relevant to improving as an actual person. To put it simply, you're going to have a lot more success emulating the best human than emulating a computer, even if the computer is better than the human, just because you're not going to be able to think 100 moves into the future. So the second thing you're going to want to do when you're analyzing is, now that the engine's off, you take a look back through the game and you start to look at what moves could you have made differently, or maybe if you played really well, what moves could your opponent have made differently. And you want to think again back to the content here and focus on what you just learned recently, so you can use the game to actually help you internalize it and see how you can personally use it. And this brings me to the third step, which really ties that all together. Once you've found some moves that you think you could have done better, or they could have done better, that relate to what you've learned, then you can turn on the engine and test those moves and use the engine to just evaluate how the position changes based on that move. The engine will be able to tell you, after the moves that you found on your own, whether that helped you or whether that hurt you, or if you were playing as your opponent, whether that helped your opponent. Okay, now for puzzles. So in my opinion, this is the least important area, but it can still be really helpful, especially for beginners. A lot of times beginners run into a problem where they get an advantage in their games, whether they're up a piece or potentially even more, but they really struggle with converting that into an actual win. And tactics can really help with that, because when you train with puzzles, it shows you common mating patterns. So it shows you essentially how to turn an advantage into a win, which again is really helpful if you're just starting out. But other than that, there's two main things I want to talk about with puzzles. The first one is why I don't recommend them too much, and that's because puzzles are very limited in terms of what you can study. So you can set a puzzle to be any different topic, but they're always oriented around short combinations that win you a piece or win you the game. And the reason why you don't want to spend too much time doing that is because what ends up being more important than that in an actual game is getting into positions where you have a tactic, or getting into positions that force your opponent to make a blunder, which then gives you a tactic. And the reason why this doesn't show up in tactics is because a lot of that comes through in the positioning of the game. So there aren't any tactics where your goal is to find the best square for your bishop, or find the best outpost for your knight, or make a pawn break that doesn't win you any material but just gives you a superior position. So the second thing I want to mention about puzzles, and this is the reason why I actually think they are really helpful, is that puzzles allow you to study themes very quickly and very specifically. So going back to content, you have your structured, organized themes that you've been working on. If you go into the tactics trainer on chess.com and go to puzzles, you're going to be able to select the themes that you want, the themes that you've been focusing on and want to practice. And on top of that, you're going to be able to do them again and again, which is great. Because if you just only play real games, you might play a string of games in a row where the themes that you've been studying or learning about never even come into play, really. And even if they do, you might have to play a whole 15-minute time control game just to experience one situation where it comes up, as opposed to the puzzles where you can get it and you can get it again and again. All right, so that is everything that I have for today. I hope this video has been helpful, but now go out there and play some games. Good luck.